Okay, we continue with Reishis Chochma. He's now going through many reasons why the Sefer is called Reishis Chochma. Um, so start again from so again from Sif Lametes. Jesus Yitzchak Shem Sifri Rex Chok Yimach Shir VaMaise Ikra Chochma Kmo Shenemar Ein Ikra Limra Chochma Alak Dama Shala She'ayira VaHamaise Unikra Chochma Ben Amitus. So now, for this reason that we've said, yes, we've been saying constantly throughout this Hakadama, the main thing is Lomod Amanas Lasos. And of course, you're only going to be Lomod Amanas if you have your Shemayim first. So now, since the Yira and the Maisa are both the Ikra Chachma, Yira is the orientation that must precede Chachma, and it's the Yira that precedes Chachma that will put a spin, put your orientation on the Chachma that you want to do it Lamaisa. Like we said, the Ikra is not the learning of the Chachma per se, so much as what precedes it, the orientation, and what the goal is, which is the Yira, what precedes it, and the Maisa. That's what's called true wisdom. Right? It's called true wisdom if they mitzad the Yira, mitzad the Maisa. Shamar Adam and Shamar Pasuk, and this is really what the Pasuk says. For Yiras Hashem is wisdom. Yiras Hashem is wisdom because it's the ikra of what wisdom is about, and is what the Gemara says in Shabbos. Darshu Shabbos Perak Sheni Amram Yechar Mishum Rebbe Lazar and Lokoshav Olam El Yiras Shemayim Vad. The only thing that the Rebbe has in his world is Yiras Shemayim Shneimar. What does Hashem ask from you other than to fear him? And there's another pasuk, this pasuk from Eov. For Yiras Hashem is wisdom, v'gomer, and as the pasuk ends, v'shkein, b'loshin yivori korem la'achas hein, as in Greek, ancient Greek. Hein is one. I mean, the one real wisdom is Yiras Hashem. So since Yira is the Ikra Chochma, but Pasuk Amar Hi Chochma, right? And the Torah says it is wisdom. Yira who roy shikara Chacham, because only someone who has fear of God in him, he is really to be good. He merits to be called wise. Because someone who's lacking Yiras Shemayim does not have true wisdom. The true wisdom is Yiras Shemayim, and that true wisdom, which is on a basis of Yiras Shemayim, is Amanas Lasos. And we spoke about this, much earlier in the Sefer, the relationship between Yira and Maisa. It's so Sof Maisa b'machshava tchila. Hein Yiras Hashem Yiras kol demesach chamaso. So that's the Sof Maisa, literally Maisa. Maisa is the Sof Maisa is the Maisa. Is machshava tchila, which is Yira, and we spoke about this at length at the when we first started this series. Dorshu ve'ela Shmos Rabbah, and also in the Medrash Shmos Rabbah, they darshan Parshimim Zoshon Rabbi Yoshaya said Rabbi Shah Komi Shehu Yodea Ve'embo Yiraschet, someone who knows Torah but he has no Yiraschet. Ein Bi'Yara Klum, he doesn't really have anything. Kol Nagar Shein Al Galia Shalo. It's like a carpenter. It doesn't have his argalia, some type of it's a drill or a saw. It's one of the carpentry tools. You don't have the tools. You don't have the tools. You're not a carpenter. Lama and wise cash. So why going back on if you don't have Yura, you don't have nothing. Shel kaflios shel Torah b'yiraschet. Right. The kaflios is the head of Torah is in yiraschet. Meaning Yiras contains the Torah. It's the containment that holds the Torah. Shenemar Yiras Hashem Yotzor, for Yiras Hashem is his treasure house. Right, and Nefesh Chaim talks about at great length that, and I think this was mentioned before earlier in the Sefer. Yiras Hashem is the Yiras Hashem Yotzor is That's the Otzer that holds the Torah. The Torah is in the Otzer. The Torah is contained by Yiras Hashem, and that's why if you ask Chochma Mitzkayemes, it holds on to the Chochma, it preserves the Chochma. It's the Otzer that holds the Chochma. You don't have the Otzer, you don't have the treasure, you don't have the storage house, so you'll just lose what you have because nothing to hold it and preserve it. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, so call Mishu Yodeh, Torah said, Mutar Shev, anyone knows Torah and doesn't fulfill the Torah he knows, would have been better if we've never been born, but rather that is umbil courtship, flipped over on his face and I guess choked him. L'kach nemar, and therefore it says, Hein Yiras Hashem, Hein, for, the one wisdom is Yiras Hashem. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, said Rabbi Chia bar Mao, Hein Yiras Hashem. Was Hein Yiras Hashem Chochma again? Hein Yiras Hashem Chochma. Amar Kim, says Hashem, Im hayucha ma'asim tovim, schar. If you have good deeds, I give you reward for those good deeds. What is the reward you get for your good deeds? Torah. Shedemar, as it says, he said to man, for Yiras Hashem is wisdom, Visur Meira Bina, and to stay away from anything evil. That's called real Bina. It's called real understanding. You get it. You understand the difference between good and evils, and therefore you avoid evil. So Yiras Hashem is Chochma, and to avoid doing evil is Bina. Vim Sarta Minara. And if you indeed follow through, Yiras Hashem is Chochma, and then Bina, you stay away from evil. So if you stay away from evil, you will have children, all right, that will truly understand Torah. How do you know this? How do we know all this? That have Yiras Hashem, and which is Chochma, and from Chochma comes Bina, and therefore you will stay away from all sin. And if so, you'll have kids that are Mevine Torah. How do we know this? Yocheved Miriam, we know this from Yocheved and Miriam. Beishi or Melkim, it says that for a time they fear God. Yocheved and Miriam were the Miyaldot that refused to follow through on Paro's decree to kill all the boys born, and it says Vatiranam Yasokim, they feared God. They feared God. Akal Shono Linyanenu. Right, so they feared God. So at least regarding Yocheved, she feared God, and because she feared God, as the pasuk goes on, therefore they were sur meira. Then from fearing God, they came to understanding between right and wrong, and they did not kill the kid. And who came from Yocheved? Moshe, who was the biggest understander. He was the biggest. He was Moshe's called Torah Kula for all the generations. So you get kids who are Mevine Torah. No bigger Mevin Torah than Moshe Rabbeinu. Right. So it is enough as far as our president and therefore when we say the words Reishis Chochma, that is to say right, to bring the lay forth the Maisa that is necessary to have Chochma, the Reishis Chochma, and Ein Chochma Yira Mukdemis, and of course the Reishis HaMaisa that you need to lay down before you acquire Chochma, which is the true intent of Chochma, Besod Sof Maisa Machshava Tchila, is Yira. So this book, which is about Yiras Hashem, should rightly be called Reishis Chochma. Vod kivanti lekroshe maser Loros came to us bo lo leburim lo mishorech berech Chochma. But I'll tell you another reason why I'm calling it Reish Chochma. It's not. There's no benefit in this book to people who are empty-headed, and not anyone who ever had the most basic smell of wisdom. You try to speak intelligently to fools. They make fun of what you say because they don't understand it or they can't appreciate it. Therefore, as Shlomo Melch said, Chochma Musar Vim Bazu, Chochma and Musar is the fools denigrated. They don't value it. Ach bishesh bo Reishis Chochma, right? But someone who has the Reishis Chochma, at least the beginnings of wisdom, like literally, Reishis Chochma in the literal sense. He has a little bit of wisdom, right? Just a little bit of wisdom, but a little bit of true wisdom. He's going to find rebuke, for Sov Yiskayimbo, and that rebuke will be well, you know, absorbed in him and well sustained in him. As the Pasuk says, give rebuke to the wise man. He will love you for it. He wants to be corrected. He wants to be shown the right way. He's a oeves hatochachos, but you got to be a chacham, right? At least to have the beginnings of a chacham, chachma. So you need Reishis chochma in order to get musar, because if you're totally empty-headed, musar is just lost on you, and you'll just denigrate it. And so they were saying, now, even though I wrote, my intent of this book was for me, as he says, the author, that I should collate all the words of Chazal that cause the heart, to subjugate itself. And I want all those divrei Chazal mesudar in front of me, all well arranged in front of me. I'll call parim masha tochaz kayotzi, but someone will also get rebuke from the Sefer, someone who's like me. So even though I wrote it for me, but anyone who's like me will also find benefit in the Sefer. Now let's say there might not be any benefit in this book to the very big Chachamim that already know everything that's written in this Sefer. At least there'll be some chiddush here for those who are just starting out, like I am. He's saying in his humility, like those are just starting out like me. Hashem Reishis, people, they're just Reishis. So the big Chachamim that are way past the Reishis Chachma, they're really deep into wisdom. Maybe they know it already and they don't need the book. But those who are like me, that are Reishis Chachma, just beginning to become wise, but there is already some wisdom. And, the Nefesh Chaim talks about this also in chart. Yav Chochma lechakimin. Hashem gives wisdom to the wise. Well, if you're wise already, well, you need wisdom. What is the Reishis Chochma, which is Yerushalayim, kind of synonymous. So Yerushalayim is called a certain level of Chochma. It's vice versa. If you're not a Chacham a little bit, Yerushalayim is, you don't come to Yerushalayim, and Yerushalayim is lost on you. So it's kind of like a circular. You need a certain amount of Chochma to get Yerushalayim, and then after you have Yerushalayim, then the Rebbe Shalom gives you even more Chochma. That's you have Chochma lechakimin, as the Nefesh Chaim explains it. All right, so I'm here. I'm at the Reishis Chochma v'lo Chochma. I'm at the beginning of wisdom. I'm not knee deep in the wisdom. I'm at the beginning of wisdom. And that's why this book is good for me. If people who are super geniuses may not need it. Because I don't really fully know wisdom and das kadoshim, which is bina, as the pasuk says. And to my limited understanding, I did what I did to write this book, to give myself musar for me and people like me. Because after all, it's very important to learn Musar. Like we said earlier, we should not, if we are people who are engaged in Torah study, we should not, speak nice ideas, and it should just be like, God forbid, only virtue signaling and not actually doing. It should be Noah Darsh, and and Noah Mekayim. We should do as we know. Do it. Our actions should reflect our knowledge. Shouldn't be chas v'shalom noah darsh v'lo na'im mekayim. As it says in Shmos Rabbah regarding the parsha of the Mun in Parshas B'Shalach. So what does the Medrash Rabbah say over there? Lachmo nasan meimav neimanim, right? Lachmo nitan meimav neimanim. The bread was given, and there's faithful waters, right? Zah Kodesh Baruch Hu shemafkid lebnei Torah, right? This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he gives Torah to the bnei Torah. That's what it means. He gives his bread and his waters flow faithfully. Alte Omer, and therefore do not say. Al mashalo shemat shabbat. So therefore, you also be honest in your learning. Don't say on like something that you made up. Don't say, I heard that this is the halacha, or I heard this Dvar Torah. If you made it up, don't say you heard it somewhere. Vote omer lacher v'matatzcha, and don't tell vote oser lacher v'matatzcha, and don't say, oh, this is also do, and that's also do, but you yourself, you don't keep those things, and you tell other people are also. You yoytze pira ne'emanim k'shei just rather that's not meimav ne'emanim also goes on the ben Torah, right? That you should not let out from your mouth, other than things that you could be trusted on. Just like Moshe, whatever came out of his mouth, you could be sure God really told him that. So also, what comes in your mouth, be honest about it, and being part of being honest about it is also practice what you preach, right? Hashem says, if you do that, I will show you the beauty of Panim Apam. The Melech, in its full beauty, you will see. Meaning, if you conduct yourself that way, Divrei Torah, you're honest about the Divrei Torah that you only say, you credit your Rebbe when you talk or heard it. And if it's something that you made up, don't say this is what they say, this is what I heard. Don't say that. Everything and practice what you preach. If you do that, you are Naaman with the Torah that comes out of your mouth. The Rebbe also be mashpia to Torah in a manner of panim b'panim with a tremendous clarity. You'll be zocher to see, the beautiful face of Torah. Right? This is the Medrash along sides. Ol Darshu, and the Chazal also say, regarding the pasuk in Koheles, it's a Medrash Koheles Rabbah by the pasuk Koheles. The wisdom of the poor person is denigrated. What does that mean? If a person is not rich, people don't care what he says. Like people might say, like Rabbi Akiva and his friends, were they rich that we should listen to what they say? We should care what they think. They're not rich. They're not rich, and therefore they're not powerful, and therefore they're not influential. Why should we listen to them? That's Chochma Samiskem B'Zoy, that the Bnei Torah are poor. And he said, because they're poor, why should I listen to them? Right? But actually this marriage is asking it rhetorically, meaning, would you actually say, you are Ben Torah? Of course, a very unrefined, a boor, would say, I'm not listening to Akiva, he's not rich. But we, the B'nai Torah, will we say such a thing? They're not rich, so I'm not listening to them. Would we ever say such a thing? That's the same which a lowlife would say. A boor v'amoritz would say a thing like that. But would we ever say, because Akiva and his friends weren't rich, right? Should we listen to them? Right? These guys, of course, we should listen to them. They make Xeris on Tzibur, and they uphold everything they were geyser. Elmal Chochma Samiskein, Mismaskein Midivrei Torah Shemlam Acherem, who has to come. Therefore, the pshat has to change, right? Because Chalil v'chas to say that because a Ben Torah is not rich, we won't listen to him. Of course, we'll listen to Rekiva Chaver even though they weren't rich, right? And why will we listen to them? Because they practice what they preach. So therefore, what's Chochma Samiskein? What is Chochma? The Chochma of the poor one. Shemesakein mi divrei Torah. He makes himself poor of divrei Torah. What does it mean? He makes himself poor of divrei Torah. He teaches other people what to do, but he himself doesn't uphold what he teaches others. The fikach dvarav enam mishayim, right? And therefore, a person who does not practice what he preaches, so he's a misken in the sense that he doesn't practice what he preaches. So his chachma's bezuya. You don't listen. We're not. So even bnei Torah are not mekabel Torah from a person who doesn't practice what he preaches. Therefore, his words are not heard because they tell other people, you got to do this, you got to do this. Low talbur, like he says, low talbur, no one should lend with ribbis. They mal ribbis, and they themselves do lend with ribbis, right? So of course, people like that, we're not going to be makabel Torah from, Ad Kol Shal is the words of the Medrash Rabbah that Chochma Samisken Bezuya is talking about. The Chochma Samisken is even Bezuya in the eyes of a Ben Torah. Why? Because Miskein is not talking about his personal finances. Mitzkain is he is morally bankrupt because he doesn't practice what he preaches. So if he doesn't practice what he teaches, of course we're not going to listen to him. All right. V'gam kivanti kroso b'sheres chacham. Another reason why I call it Sefer Reishis. Chochma kishar machabim shekidmuni amram b'tshuva ma'asim kadros v'isachem rachav. All the other authors that came before me, that talk about tshuva and ma'asim tovim, like the Chovos HaLevavos, like the Shar Tshuva Rabbeinu Yaina. All the Sifrei Musar of the Rishonim. He's an early Achron, right? So all the Sifrei Musar of the Rishonim. They wrote their Musar, their broad intelligence. Kamo, for example, Hachosid Baal Chovos HaLevavos, Rabbeinu Shardo, like the Rabbeinu Bachya and the Chovos HaLevavos, Rabbeinu Yon Shar Tshuva Domem, and people like them. Vani Tavasi Likor Divrei Rabbeinu, right? And I always took for the main thing to work with Divrei Rabbeinu, not to make things up, but to take precedents from their words. I always start off, I always start off with things that I learned from them, from Chazal, Shari Tshuva, from other primary sources. Now, of course, sometimes I won't go directly to the Chovos HaLevavos or Shari Tshuva. I'll start with a Zohar, that fits, the thing I want to talk about. And then I'm going to write down what the Rishonim wrote and what the Mefarshim wrote. And of course, I collated from the words of Rabbi Seinu, from the Rishonim, and from the Zohar, the beginnings, what they say, whatever's Nogea L'Maisa. And I didn't bring all the lumdus and all the drushes. I just brought the essence of what's Nogea L'Maisa. So I just took the Reishis. So now, just like the Bikurim, which was just the very first fruits, or just the very first fruits, called Reishis. I took like the Reishis, just the first pickings of just the most pure, refined flower of the words Chaim. To be short and not to be marich with all the drushes and all the esberim and all the echrechem. I just collated what is necessary. Many times I go Perush al-Marim, that's also I didn't even write Perushim on the Mamram. You see a lot of the Zohars, there's a lot to unpack, and he just if he ever explains, he just explains certain particular points. He wants to just the ikar of the dvarim and just the general gist of what's Nogea L'Maisa. All right. When I explain a Zohar, when I add Pirush, it's only what's necessary for the Lamaisa, right? Not so much for the Lumdus, but what's the amount of explanation necessary for Lamaisa. Lamaisa, what do you have to do? Lamaisa, what do you have to take out? So I did this all not because I wasn't able to do more, just because I didn't want to speak at length. And also, sometimes if you want to get into Perushim, there's not just one Perush, so many different Perushim. So it's better not to get into all the different explanations. And therefore, as far as Taich, all the different lumdus that you could say in the primary sources, particularly in the Zohar. All right, Drush for Kabul Schar you. I just want to focus on the Lamaisa. L'chein krasiv Reishis Chochma. Right, and therefore I called it Reishis Chochma, right? So because I just took the Reishis, just the Bikurim, just the main points, the main primary sources, right? The Reishis of the Chochma, just like the Bikurim of the Chochma, just the very first fruits, the very most primary ideas. And also Gam, and also another thing, Milas Reishis, B'Mispar Kotin, Mosius Reishis, B'Chesher B'Mispar Kotin. All right, this you guys work this out. The Gematria sub says you take the Gematria of Reishis, but B'Mispar Kotin means you get rid of all the zeros, right? So like 130 Mispar Kotin is 13, as an example. So you take Reishis, but you put Mispar Kotin with the letters Reishis. You add to it, another 5 for the 5 letters of Reishis. So it would be also the same cheshbon as his name. His name was Eliyahu, but Eliyahu also b'mispar katan. So it's the same Reishis with the 5 oisius. Is the add 5 for the oisius. Mispar katan is the same mispar katan as Eliyahu. All right, I'll take his word for it. Okay, but now here's a very important point. All right, let's do it. גם בבני שניתו רשוס לעד פסר פרשו מורי עליו השלום ומסלול כרצו השם ייתו כי מי שכרזו חוכמה פיס בליצ'ו מעשתם לא כרזו חוכמה. But there's another thing. My Rebbe, the Ramak, just now, he says, permission was given. I guess it means it was, just sort of a poetic way of saying it was printed, or you could say permission was given that, was decided to publicize Sisrei Torah, so the Sefer Pardes. Sefer Pardes used to be the primary work in Kabbalah. Before the Arizal came on the scene, it was the primary work, because, he collated from all those that came from, and he also, he worked out the contradictions, he synthesized, or sometimes he was forced to reject. That is the book that first made Seder out of all Kabbalah before the Ari added another story to it. Because, everyone agrees that the Torah of the Ramak is Emes, Moshe Emes starts, but Ba'olam Matohu, the Torah of Olam Hatikun, another step, the Ari added to it, or called this, the way the Ramchal says it in his, I think it's in the Ma'amar Vikuach. The Ramak spoke B'derech Klal. The Ari was Megala was Megala the Pratim. It's another way of looking at it. We spoke about this. The Kabbalah of the Ramak versus Kabbalah of the Arizal by the Arizal's Yortzeit Suda that we do every year. So take the address, should be on the YouTube channel also, where we said the remarks of the Teras Ari. All right, so now he says, look, so now the Pardes of my Rebbe, the Moshe Korver, is out there. And like I say, if not for the Sfarm of the Ramchal, people would be learning Pardes like crazy just to get their feet wet in Kabbalah. The reason why it's not as popular as it once was is because later people wrote other books that are actually easier to use to get into the basic ideas of Kabbalah. But the Pardes used to be the book, the ultimate book in Kabbalah, that makes sense, synthesize all the different things that the Mekubalim Rishonim wrote, work them out and, compare, contrast, synthesize. When it was not just to make Seder, it was not just like, finally clarity, but with a lot of rayas why it has to be that way. It's a lumdish say for the Pardes. Aside from saying the Asodos, he says why it has to be and why, he's going to prefer this from this Rishon, because it stims better with the Zohar than that Rishon, or sometimes when there's makom for both, he synthesizes and shows how Elu Ve'od Devokim Chaim, where each one fits. Very fundamental work, and it was the work in Kabbalah, right? Prior to the Pirsum of the Kisvei Ari. So now you want to learn Pardes of my Rebbe, you can't learn Kabbalah without doing tshuva and having maisim tovim. A person who is lacks Yirah Shamayim. First of all, and Amoritz for sure not. I think we had this yesterday, when we did last session, that only from Omek HaTalmud, not Art Scroll, from real Gemara learning, but Omek, that is the gateway to get into Chochma Kabbalah, but that's mitzad intellectual acumen. You need that. A person who can't handle Gemara has no business learning Kabbalah, learning real Gemara. And real Gemara, but Omek, has no business going to Kabbalah. It's no business if Gemara is heavy for him. But with all that, you have to double down on tshuva and maisim tovim, right? And this is, this is also mafurish in the Zohar. There are other shomrim. Right? There's the Nechashim Kravim and Srafim, the poisonous snakes, spiritual snakes, meaning like demons, Right? They are like a snake protecting the cave. They're protecting that someone who's they're protecting the good of Sisrei Torah, right? Deloyo Taman Man Delo Iu Royma, that no one should enter into Chochma Sakabal, someone who is not befitting. He's not Roy to go in. V'ilav, because if not, for these snakes and scorpions that are guarding around Chochmas HaKabbalah. And by the way, snakes and scorpions doesn't just mean that a person could die prematurely. It's like lethal force that will be inflicted, but also it's also, as from what I read, it's also could be like that, that they will cause him to become an apikaris. They'll cause him to go off the derech. Right, it's like it's a very dangerous thing. It's it's guarded by a very thick shell that a person who is not worthy to to overcome, either gets killed or goes crazy or goes off the derech, right? And Akash allowed these kochos, these, as it were, for lack of a better word, these demons to surround the Chochmas HaKabbalah, because it's a good buffer to stop anyone who's not worthy from coming in. It has to be, otherwise all the Rishonim would have access to the secrets of the Torah. And therefore, someone who's a Rasha, but he wants to go learn Kabbalah anyway. He wants to go into the secret Torah. So there's some angels of retribution, angels of harm. The angels that are called darkness, they're also called, those angels are called snakes and scorpions. Chivas word are called wild animals, all right, wild animals of the forest. They mix them up. The people who learn Kabbalah and are not Roy, they say the stupidest things. They're totally mixed up. It's because, if you're not Roy, even though very intelligent people, they go in and they're not Roy, it really, they screw with your head so badly, and I see it, Keep on saying these neo-Hasidic bozos, some of them sometimes actually read real text, not just yo-yo books, and they do not understand it whatsoever, and they're totally mixed up. And if they are these type of spiritual gurus, they're spreading misinformation about Sisrei Torah and Pnimius HaTorah, and you just see it. You have to be ra'ui. And Ra'ui, it doesn't just mean intellectual command, it also means particularly Yirah Shamayim and being a real Yorechet, not a Baal Taiva, and also means going in also to the extent that you're Roy. Don't overstep. Only progress as you're Roy to progress more. So, you go into it and you're not Roy, they mix you up. But they mix up for a constructive purpose, I mean, if they publicize their mixed up ideas, then they're choteu machdias arabim, but with the assumption that they will not publicize their mixed up ideas, it's they're keeping them out. These malachei Kabbalah are keeping them out from getting to a place where they don't belong. Avoman di'iu type, but if someone's really a good person, call in the Torah in the memre. So all these, these people, these surrounding forces that, these snakes and scorpions that are surrounding Sisrei Torah, they are obedient to him. They surrender to him. They guard his word, meaning they keep his word. They become subject to him. The kategor nasa sanegar, and they would, instead of prosecuting against him, right, they actually defend him, and they don't try to bar him. They don't prosecute against him getting in. They actually are his, as it were, advocate to go in. Right, and they actually escort him in, allow him in, and escort him in to this hidden goodness. And they tell him, Marana, right, our master, Ha Barnash Tov, this is a good person. V'tzadik v'yirei shamayim, right? So they say, they say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Morana, our master, Hashem, this is Ha Barnash Tov v'tzadik yirei shamayim. There's a good person who's at Tzaddik Ba la la kadama. He wants to come before you, Ribbon Shalom. V'amar lanu, and this man tells us, Piskuli Sharei Tzedek, right? Open me up the gates of righteousness, to come into Sisrei Torah. So you need Reishis Chochma from the Talmud of the Ramak to learn the Paras, the Torah of the Ramak, and Kal V'chol, you need it. You need the Tshuva Mitzvah to learn the Torah of Rabbeinu Ha'ari. This is Lashon for our point. And therefore I intended to make this book to explain the ways for he wants to go into the wisdom. Meaning you got to learn my sefer as Hakdama to be the type of person that's roy to learn Kabbalah. Right, and therefore, that's why also I engage a little bit in Kabbalah. So I don't, we've seen ourselves so far. He brings the Musarish Zohars, mainly, and he says mainly for the Musar, like he says, he doesn't talk too much about the philosophy. Mainly focuses on the Lemaisa. What is the Zohar demanding from you, and what is the Lemaisa Dika Yira Shamayim message from the Zohar? But every once in a while, he does say in Yonei Sod, because he does, one of the objectives of the book is, to make you ra'ui, to learn sod. When we get Sharav, most of it's going to be Zohar. That's called most of it from Zohar. All this, we have Zohar almost every other paragraph. Over there, it's like going to be even more. A lot of Zohar in Sharava, right? So Sharava was going to bring also from the later Makubal, explaining it, because again, that's also what he's alluding to, is because one of the reasons you need to learn Kabbalah, the Ramak explains in his Sefer or Nerab, you can't have Avas Hashem if you don't learn Kabbalah. You see the wonders of Maisa Bresh, Maisa, you can't help but love God. Ritzon Chalak Misha Omar Vaya Olam, Misha Omar Vaya Olam, Daikas, Maisa Lamod Haggadah, Haggadah to the Sod. Sod is what helps you be makir misha omar when we talk kachata ohev, right? Okay. The Chochma, and therefore another reason why it's called Reishis. Reishis, the Chochma Pnimis. This is the beginning to come into the Chochma Pnimis. Kabbalah. Because the Chochma is Kabbalah is really what's called Chochmas HaTorah per se, in truth. Right, because it's like all the other levels of Torah, just training to get there. That's like spitz of Chochmas HaTorah. Kamosha Kosav, Hachasid Rav Yosef Yais Hashal Mitzvah Kodesh Kodesh Chochmas Alzel Shono. It is like he wrote. The Chassid Yavitz wrote in his Pirush on Ovis on Kodesh Chochmas, and this is it could be that the Chochma that Yiras Chet has to proceed is not, the Chochma of how to do mitzvahs, meaning halacha. Kima Chochma Yona. You need Yiras of Kodemis Chochma. So what's the Chochma? So Chochma Yona. Chochma Kabbalah. Vidias Tamit, that's to know Tamit as well. That's really what we're davening for. Right? Because what are you asking after we already asked? We already asked for understanding, to understand Torah, to listen, and to teach. What were we missing that we have to ask beyond that? Right? Elevada the Chochma for us we're talking about the Avarin of Sosach is going on Chochmas Kabbalah. Shalom Ardar Shom that David said regarding Gal Einai. So it's Vahir and Abasarasecha, which is above the same Billy Bail and Haskell. That's going on halacha. But then we further read even after that, Vahir and Abasarasecha for Chochmas Kabbalah. Parallel to what Davin Gal Ein, I opened my eyes. I see the wonders of your Torah. No, David Kain al Dine Shormu of a Shortam, and David Melch wasn't say that on on Baba Kama, the Shormu at Shortam. After Dine Isved, not even on the laws of Kasha, who Nashay so Bekios Bem, because even women know the laws of Kashas very well. That was then. It's talking about this wisdom that has no end. Chochma Kabbalah, right? He cultivated that our whole hope to be successful with it. You talk on the and to have success because you read Chochma to really be Davik in the divine name. The Chochma now, of course, the Chochma of doing mitzvahs is nothing if you don't actually do the mitzvahs. God forbid, as we've been saying over and over again. And this we've had this mentioned throughout, but he's just quoting the Chassid Yavitz. Lo Mesha Ikar El Maisa. The medrash is not the main thing. Maisa main thing. So Meisa Shem Yisrael Latov Lefon of Yisale, right? Right. But this Chochma of Kabbalah, right? This is Chochma where the Chochma is the Ikar, right? By halacha the Chochma is not the Ikar. The Maisa is the Ikar. Right, but by Chochma's Kabbalah, the Chochma is the Ikar. The Chochma itself gives you Dveikas Hashem. And if you have people that know a lot of Torah, if they are not righteous, they can't know Chochmas HaKabbalah properly. They can't, and they think they know, but they really don't know. And I've seen these clowns, and if they're their misunderstanding of Kabbalah, that they just quote like, a parrot, that they mouth off mindless. It could be that they both lack Yiras Shamayim and are stupid, but definitely lacking Yiras Shamayim inside the types of corrupt messages that they say. All right, and this is all from the Chassid Yavitz. All right, we're going to stop here, but he's going to bring a further raya from the Zohar to what the Mishnah Yavitz says. The Chassid Yavitz. All right, but that's why it's called Reishis Chochma, right? He'll double down on this. Right? You want to go into the Chochmas HaKabbalah, you need this book ahead of entry into Chochmas HaKabbalah. Yiras Shamayim is essential. Yiras Shamayim and Ma'asim Tovim is essential to go into Chochmas. Without it, you won't understand it at all. All right, we'll stop here.